Okay. Hello, it's me. I've been away from the channel for a while. Um, all of you who stuck around, thank you. And here's some new content because there's new stuff to discuss. Uh, I had, well, I just needed a break for various reasons, but one of the reasons was I felt that I had hit the limit of what I could say about any of this stuff with my current tool set and methods. And I sort of decided to take some space, especially to see if the technology could catch up a little bit to a place that we could finally, um, develop some better tools for statistically modeling and analyzing the kinds of things that we pay attention to in these weird films. Uh, and that happened. Um, and so I'm back with some new tools and some better understanding of the data. And actually, what I'm doing now is I'm embarking on a project to build some really powerful specialized tools to help us with this stuff. And so there's going to be a definite shift here on the channel in the direction of increasingly technical work. I myself have an engineering background, so I know about like electronics design and programming and things like that. But for impact, which is to say the analysis of impact, um, I need to become actually like a real scientist now. So I have a whole lot of stuff to learn and a whole lot of stuff to kind of reactivate in my brain from the STEMmy side of things. Because I've actually spent the last bunch of years uh, really leaning into my singing and my vocal practice and trying to develop that and progress that. I got to a pretty good place with that right around the time that things started heating up with Impact again. So, anyway, I don't know if that was a good intro or not, but here I am making more video for all you fine fellow weirdos out there who are interested in this space of sort of emergent remote views in high dimensional data sets like video. Uh, just a quick refresher on things, and okay, I'm going to actually minimize my self now. How do I do that again? I actually right click. So one of the things that I've been working on vis-a-vis these new tools is a completely new platform for actually making these videos and just doing my video analysis in general. So I used ChatGPT as a robot programmer to help me put together this new analysis environment that I'm calling Sync OS. And the whole idea of Sync OS is it's going to enable me to not ever touch a nonlinear editor again. That was really the big sort of labor part of this channel outside of the actual research, which I'm doing anyway. But in terms of actually making these videos, I spend so much time editing them just to get all of the clips up on the screen when I need them, which takes a long time to do. We should have an annotation up. There we go. In terms of put a clip here, put a clip here, put a clip here, etc. Now I don't have to worry about that because I can very rapidly spawn all the video I need to from anywhere I need to, and we can just do it all live. And so the video is the video, which is a very new way for me to work. I'm used to being able to kind of edit out dead air and things like that. So I hope you all won't mind a more naturalistic sit down with me. Because I just cannot edit. Yeah, I did that professionally in New York for many years, and I'm burnt out on video editing. But I still like to mess around with video. So anyway, this thing is built on top of SteamOS, which is basically a KDE Plasma Linux environment, if you know anything about that stuff. What we've done is just kind of heavily modify it. I say we to mean me and my me and my AI. It's a lot of vowels. Assistant. It's basically a combination of Bash scripting, Lua scripting, and just a tiny little bit of Python to hold all this stuff together. So I'm going to launch it now, and we're going to get started talking about some stuff. That's a little logo that my partner and I made out of this lovely hologram pendant that I acquired recently and just completely fell in love with. Okay, well, I guess one of the first things I want to talk about actually is the issue of AI. Because in the time that I've been away from speaking about these things, this issue has just completely exploded, obviously, in the culture. And I want to say straight away that I don't have a simplistically pro or against stance on this. I knew from the beginning of this work that advanced statistical tools operating in high-dimensional spaces were going to be necessary in order to actually crack open this problem quantitatively. And so we have those now, and it's attached to the thing that is colloquially known as AI. So I'm very grateful to have these tools and to be able to use them. Also, just in terms of prototyping software like this, I could have created SyncOS on my own. I mean, like I said, I do have some kind of a programming background, but it would have taken many months. I would have had to learn Bash, because I don't know anything about Bash scripting, you know. I would have had to brush up on my Python and basically learn Lua, although Lua's pretty simple. But instead, I was able to produce this working prototype in seriously like a week and a half. So I've also been slowly adjusting my understanding of what's possible to achieve as an individual now in this new technological paradigm. Okay, with all of that said, however, I am just well, here, since I'm not drawing at the moment, maybe I will. Full screen. Oh, we've really lost focus. Hello, focus please. There we go. I am just dismayed, of course, at the actual way that this technology has arrived and is being introduced into the culture. It's just bad on so many levels of analysis. Not, you know, the worst of which, in my opinion, is the fact that it's immediately being put into weapon systems and like genocide machines. And it's, you know, look at how we're actually using this technology. It's a dismal reflection on human nature. So I also have a ton of criticism about all this stuff, and I am not a fan of any of these big companies, even though I am kind of obligated to use their platforms in order to do my work. Unfortunately, I'm in pretty deep. It's not just AI companies like OpenAI. I'm renting like supercomputer time from Google via like a Google Collab subscription and stuff, which allows me to run some more complex models and so on. So someday I hope to build a company around some of these things I'm now developing that can actually do things in an ethical way. But in order to get there, we have to dance with the devil a little bit. So anyway, that's just the spiel about that, because I know it's like a high sensitivity issue now. But serious work on impact begins when this technology begins. So it's begun, and so we can talk about these things now. Well, let's just jump right in. I'm going to open Player. And please bear with me. I'm just still learning my new system here, so there's likely to be some technical problems along the way and so on. Actually, let me just double check that we are in fact recording. Yes, we're recording. Going to slightly adjust my camera. And now we're going to find what do we actually want to do? I think we want to go into it wouldn't be in targets, would it? No. I'm trying to remember where I put all this stuff. Probably more media. Artificial matches. There we go. Okay, so maybe closer to 2 years ago now or something. But I think at some point in 2015, I became aware of a trend in, like generative AI images using a system called illusion diffusion. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to full screen this. Do we want to have my little video window on top? Does that matter? Oh, I don't know. It matters. Faces for engagement, right? Isn't that what we're told over and over again? Whoops, but I want to actually do the opposite. I want to sync this. There we go. So this is an image made with a process called illusion diffusion, which is a tool you can play around with on Hugging Face. So if you search for it, it should come right up. And it combines, I think, a pretty simple diffusion-based AI image generator with something called a control net. And what a control net does is it statistically conditions the output of the diffusion system to control its feature space such that you can get things like this weird phantom McDonald's logo that just seems like it's sort of almost like an Escher drawing or something. It has the feeling of an optical illusion, which I suppose is why they named it illusion diffusion. Actually, I'm pretty sure that it begins here. Let me move my station a little bit closer here. It began with QR codes. Right? QR codes are these things that contain a bunch of like weird like binary pixel patterns in them, and when you scan them, they take you to the stupid menu at the bar that you're at, or whatever it is. And somebody wanted to come up with a way to embed QR codes naturalistically into other images for the purposes of like, promotion and so on. And so they made a tool that did that, and then that was generalized into illusion diffusion. And basically the process for this is you upload an image for the control net, which could be anything. In this case, it was probably a black and white mask with the McDonald's logo in it. And then you give the diffusion system a normal sort of prompt, just in text. So for this image, it probably would have been something like, Italian landscape, oil painting, sunset, I don't know, something like that, right? And if you know about how diffusion systems work, they're iterative. So they start actually from just total noise. Do you like the way the camera just like jiggles around like crazy when I draw now? Because in the old days, I had a laptop and a Wacom tablet, and then like like a webcam. But now I just get to draw directly on top of the video, which is very lovely and intuitive for me, but does create this issue with my camera. But actually, I'm not so used to being on camera these days, so I'm feeling a little self-conscious about it at the moment. That'll improve as I get back into the habit of making videos, but for the moment, I am just going to nuke the video here. Anyway, so the diffusion systems start with these little points in a big noise cloud. And then it iterates through a ton of passes, each time trying to shift the noise in the direction of something that resembles your prompt. I'm hugely simplifying how all this works. Under the hood, it's a bunch of linear algebra and calculus arranged in a particular clever way. But what happens with the illusion diffusion process is at each iteration, this parallel neural network that knows about this other image, control image that you fed it, it injects a little bit of statistical interference in a way that also nudges it towards the image that it knows about. So as this thing evolves iteratively inside of the diffusion system, this noise cloud is both increasingly resembling the sort of image that you describe to it in text and the exact actual sort of bitmap data that you load into the control net. Okay, so that's how that works, and that's what this looks like. Well, you better believe one of the first things I did was run home after school, as it were, and upload impact into it. And so, let's turn off my annotation layer. Here's the result of one of these experiments. Let's make it a little bigger. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll slap into a split. We'll sort of center it like that. Whoops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Now I gotta spawn another player and get that back. There we go. At least I can resolve these little hiccups that I do quickly and easily, because the system is actually very nice and stable now. Thankfully, after lots of hellish debugging, it's sort of like, what do you want to do more? Do you want to program and go through that hell, or do you want to debug somebody else's program and go through that hell? Well, for me, I'd actually rather debug. So we did a lot of debugging to get this working. But anyway, in this player, we're going to open a good old-fashioned target. Let's just get open the canonical. Well, actually, let's use the impact crop, because this is more like actually what I loaded into illusion diffusion. Okay. Now, I don't remember, unfortunately, the exact prompt that I gave for this, but it was something like, father and son in a rainy street scene. Just trying to think of kind of generic things to give it that are similar to things you might see in a film, for example. This is the kind of thing you might see in a film. A dad in a raincoat with his two children, and maybe that's his dog also in the background. Well, if you remember, part of the impact analysis involves perceiving this funny sort of creature-like thing in the explosion. It's kind of like you have an eye here and an eye here, and this weird mouth and this little indication of a nose. Something looks like an ear or just like the edge of the head or something. And then it kind of seems like materials like spilling out of it, sort of kind of like under the head or like from the neck area, etc. That's what that thing sort of resembles, and it's a little hard to tell. I mean, because it kind of has the body of an animal. It has these stubby little feet and like a head that's like kind of like the size of its body. You know, that's closer to like a cat or a dog morphologically in terms of this funny picture we're mentally projecting here into the South Tower explosion. But so this object combines the idea of an animal and a child. And it, in general, is occupying sort of this region of the frame, which is also where the twin children in yellow raincoats and dog are clustered in the illusion diffusion output. Now, you see, this is just so remarkable because this kind of association is exactly what we see in the films. A spatial clustering of objects that essentially are proximate to this thing in latent space. And if you look at what it did here, you know, I suggested that we have sort of like the body of an animal fused to kind of like a humanoid head. And look at what's happened here. It has created precisely that fusion. And that's not anything that I told it to do in the prompt. That's just a result of it trying to make the McDonald's mask appear in the fields. It's exactly the same thing here. Given what it has to work with, I mean, that's the thing. I defined a space where objects like this were likely to appear. I forget if I said, maybe I did say with a walking of a dog. It's possible I might have told it to include a dog. But the magic is that it's figured out that in this kind of scene, a dog thing and a child thing should be grouped in the location where this explosion occurs in the image. You can tell that's what it's doing just through an analysis of the color. We've said here forever that the... Oh, whoops, let's not use blue for that. Excuse me. There we go. Green to separate the N and S fields. But we've said forever that the... Well, actually, let me draw to reflect that. We said forever that cool blue and metallic tones, they don't just lateralize, they sort of upper lateralize. They tend to appear in the upper right-hand quadrant of the matches. And sort of hot colors, red, yellow, and also like very bright white, things like this, seem to cluster in the opposite position in the lower left-hand quadrant. And wow, if that isn't exactly how illusion diffusion has figured out how to parse the scene. Some other things that we can know about here. As far as illusion diffusion is concerned, which is to say, as far as this particular image process, statistical conditioned iterative image process. It's so insane that we're actually working with things like this now. But according to this kind of process, this structure here is pretty important. That comes through very clearly, right? There's this kind of arcing here of the back that follows the smoke line. And then connects to the hard edge of the phantom north tower there. There's a lot of subtlety here. I mean, it's kind of understood that the north tower is a thing that should have these dark, recessed cavities in it. That tracks that there. Something that I had never really thought about was the shadow the shadow that S casts onto N. This is a very crazy thing, because the South Tower explosion is basically a ball of light. So it's strange to think that it could cast a shadow, but of course it could, because it's blocking out the sunlight there, because it's a dense volume with debris. But again, in this process, we see that that's pretty important. That's been picked out and mapped very precisely, as well as kind of the particular cadence of these major line groups, right? Let's see. Let's look at maybe another one. This is a pretty instructive one. Let's have a look at this one. So I'm certain that the prompt here was very generic. It was probably just, New York City subway scene or something like that. But note again that it's really emphasized the same feature here. This relationship very strongly up there in the upper right-hand quadrant. Here the explosion becomes this weird sort of art installation that has the basic gestalt shape of this and seems to be made out of body parts. So that's very suggestive, because it once again is associating something kind of humanoid, but not quite, with S. That's just how S might be represented through this sort of statistical conditioning process. Iterative statistical conditioning. Maybe we should just look at the diner demo now, actually. Is this interesting to folks? I hope it is, because this is kind of like all the kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about now. I want to... Oh, that's right. I have to release it from the split. Isn't it nice that we have this sort of wave warp style movement just built into the basic compositing layer here, courtesy of the KDE plugin, wobbly windows, and a little bit of scripting on top of it to make it more uh, diverse in its output and controllable. But okay, we are opening. Is it over here? Oh, here it is. So what we have here is stabilizing the seed in illusion diffusion, and then generating a series of images where each time we increase the conditioning strength a little bit, because it turns out that's a nice parameter that you have in illusion diffusion. I think it's like, my recollection, I haven't played with it in a while, it's like 0 to 10, with 10 being, maybe it goes above 10. But to give you an idea, the default is set at 8, and it's meant to generate an illusion that is readable, so you can clearly see the statistical influence, but not in a way that's so rigid that it becomes sort of too obvious. That's the sort of zone of similarity that generates something that feels like an optical illusion. In this system, that's tuned to about an 8. And so this is starting at a conditioning of something like 0.01, and then I don't remember exactly the increments, but I just was turning up the conditioning strength a little bit each time. So you can see that as we move through the iterations, the image comes to resemble impact more and more. Notice how it's grouping food here, where the explosion would be, as well as the human figures, who are already trending in the direction of people with red hair, wearing red things, or things that also have like pointed little spotty bits of red to capture the sparkle. I think we're pretty close to the end here. Observe how this lamp has now become this very strange, narrow little glow stick in an attempt to accommodate the structure of the North Tower antenna. Look at all these nice groupings here that we end up with. So we do end up with, whoops, turn off the annotation layer, please. We do end up with a redhead in red, whoopsies, in the background here. We do end up with, a sort of scantily clad woman wearing a bra with red on white. So that texture material maps, and the idea that we're dealing with sort of some sort of a fleshy humanoid thing here when we consider the nature of the South Tower explosion. Obviously, we also have we have burgers, and with sort of like weird red napkins placed on top of them, again with this sort of speckling material, because that's very, very image similar to this through this brute force sort of statistical process. We have the orange juice and like a beer here or something, which just allows us to get more of this kind of color and texture there. Illusion diffusion really loves to paint the towers themselves in the negative space, as you see here. That's not a tendency that I've observed so much in the matches from the films, which I'm now calling the natural matches, to distinguish them from the artificial matches. So the artificial matches love to use negative space with this current level of tool. I want to build my own custom tool for doing this that I can really get into the guts of and really learn some like statistical insights from, hopefully. But at the moment, we're just using this illusion diffusion thing on huggingface.co, where the place is called. And it likes to do with the negative space. But note also the, once again, very strongly preserved smoke line with this this sort of gesture line is always replicated by this process. Let's step through. So you can see that pretty early on it decides that it can move this lamp into a position that will let it do something with the antenna. It gives it, because how are you going to do that in a scene with any degree of naturalism? It's like this weird big bar, like attached to the top of the image somehow. So how could you even build that? Well, that's a great solution to that. If you look at the very beginning, you see we actually have 3 such lamps. And then as we iterate through, remember we're turning up the correspondence dial as we move through iterations here. We've already kind of lost 1. It's still putting some light-like things there sometimes, but now we've really lost the second one. It's really disappearing. By this point, we're left with only the 1 lamp. It's already in the right location, so how could it become more like the North Tower antenna? Well, about the only thing that could happen once it's reached this level of optimization is that it needs to start morphing its actual structure to be thinner and taller. Note that it's also already, because of the choice of a lamp, it has a built-in way to give you this sort of high contrast segmentation. In Impact, it looks like it's alternating between sort of white and black patches there on the North Tower antenna. And so up here with the artificial match lamp, we already have this sort of high contrast feel of alternating something very bright with something a little dark there with the stem. Whoops. Let's see where exactly it starts to... Well, you can watch it there. So it does actually sort of seem like it snaps in at a certain point here. It's getting thinner and thinner. And then over the course of a few iterations there, let's actually sort of concentrate on it. Where is the exact moment that this... So the collapse happens very quickly. Here it sort of... It's interesting because it seems like it almost finds it a bit by accident. I mean, I don't know. I'm speculating a little bit about, the innards of a thing I don't know much about. But it's like the lamp becomes thinner here because it partially gets like merged with this weird larger series of like floating lamp-like things behind it in the background. And then once that's happened, it only takes one more iteration for it to... Now we still have like... Now there's like sort of like neon signage in the background, but this shape here has been fully defined. And then we gradually lose that material as well. over the next bunch of iterations until we arrive here in the final result. Now, there are many more matches that show interesting things and so on, but I don't want to say more about it than just what's sort of necessary to establish the relationship and prove the point here. I'm going to get just one more open to be our sort of permanent reference of what an artificial match looks like. And for that, I'm going to use rainy day. I need to go through and actually label these rather than just having these useless alphanumerics. Come on, snap to it. And so for now, I'll just kind of link those up there for us. That one's quite beautiful. Just to comment a little bit on it before we move on. I love the way it uses foliage to create the impression of the South Tower. It also puts a person in a red jacket right there. Some weird sort of statue thing is a thing that you might have in a park. So it's within the statistical possibility space of the prompt I gave it, which I think was simply rainy day at the park. I'm pretty sure that was the exact prompt for this one. So here's an interesting thing. And maybe I will get back on camera now for this bit. When I first started this work, and I was encountering the natural matches in the old films, they looked to me like nothing I had ever seen before. I mean, I had no reference point for them. And then I looked at them really closely and thought about them for a long time and sort of came to the conclusion that maybe it's like there's been a statistical interference in these images, nudging it in the direction of impact. That was actually like this working theory of mine. You can go back and watch the old videos and hear about that. Stretching, I think, probably at least as far back as like 2020 or 2019, maybe even. But now, you see, we have tools that can statistically condition images. You can use one image to statistically condition some other image and come up with this weird, like, neural morph, which is a term from my childhood. That was the big sort of popular statistical combination of images process when I was like a little kid. But that was very simple. This is a much more sophisticated kind of statistical conditioning. But now we have it, and so I can run impact through it, which, come on, annotation, which then gives me a reference point for what images look like that have been statistically conditioned by impact. And the crazy thing is how strongly the natural matches and the artificial matches resemble one another. I would actually say that the artificial matches, such as we've been able to construct them so far using this tool, are very impressive. A lot of the sort of symbolic image alignment aspects just seem to flow out of the raw statistical process as a consequence of how the latent space is organized, in part. So it's amazing how much intelligence just already sits at this like image connection level. But not only do they have that, the natural matches have something else which is hard to describe. Partly it's a kind of a flair or a style. But they also have deep thematic. There's a lot of meaning in the natural matches in terms of where they occur in the stories that they're embedded in and exactly where they're situated and what they're made out of. There's a lot of kind of weird symbolic punnage, almost like double entendres happening in the way the projection space is layered. And things like this that the artificial matches lack. They don't have that level of depth to them. So that's the other crazy thing, is that in my opinion, the natural matches are already more impressive than what we can, like, for sure generate with an actual statistical process using technology right now. That's pretty nutty just on its own. But you see, now I have a really particular funny problem. And to illustrate this problem, I would like to open a scene from FX, which is this weird movie from 1986. So let's get that achieved. And I get to show off now how fluidly I can navigate through my system and just immediately find what I'm looking for. We just want effects. Where is effects? Well, it's all just alphabetized. We also have categories, so I could look things up like by director or things like that, but I just want to get FX open. Okay, here's this crazy movie called FX. I'll put it right here, and then we'll scooch these over a little bit. And let's make it, make it nice. Oh, come on. That's interesting. Using the mouse doesn't seem... I have like multiple input methods connected up here. I'll just do it the way I know how to do it with my stuff. Oh, that's still not working. Also, why is it seeking like crazy? Oh, I knew we weren't going to get through it without one bona fide actual technical edge, but there we go. Okay, I should have just used the stylus like I signed it to work. I'm just trying to align the side. There we go. Anyway, it's nice to have a rapid fire compositing system like this now. We can lose the annotation for now. Okay, well, so here's my problem. Actually, what I want to do is open a bookmark, because I want to go straight to the Man on Fire natural match. So the area of the image that we're interested in is here. And actually, for the purposes of contemplation, I'm going to kind of crop it. So here's my problem stated plainly. Whatever this weird thing is resembles this more than any other thing to my brain now. So when I watch these old films and this kind of stuff starts happening, I have the phenomenological experience of looking at images that have been fucked around with internally through this kind of AI process. It isn't possible because this is a film made in 1986, you see. But this image in 1986 looks like the result of iterative statistical conditioning trained on this image in particular. How did a control net from 2001 influence a diffusion system from 1986? Except, oops, it isn't a control net and it isn't a diffusion system. It's just this thing that happened in history and then these weird old movies. And also, it's really weird because movies seem like they either have none of this activity or they're just infested with it. So there's like a clustering phenomenon going on. That also really makes it look organized. So just to spell out the relationships explicitly, let's sort of, here we'll do my little technique of shrinking it down to like almost like an inventory item that I can just store down here with me. So we'll pin that for now. And let's do the direct comparison between these images. So actually something that I would like to do is calibrate at least the sort of the North Tower tip there. It's usually a good place to start for the purposes of alignment. So we require a ruler, which we are also going to expand. There's the top of the North Tower. So yeah, that's pretty good, at least just for the purposes of demonstration. So here's an amazing thing that like I just never noticed before, because when I was sort of trying to crunch this just in my brain, I wasn't paying attention to the smoke line for whatever reason. I just didn't know how to read that. But I'll be damned if it isn't right there, connected to the to the North Tower, primary North Tower resonator in that match. It's really got it there. The angle's not quite as perfect, but it's pretty close in terms of the basic gesture line, I'd say. Obviously, we have the actual ball of fire situated between the twin pillars. But we also have these red flowers. And that's exactly how illusion diffusion would do it. It would cluster those things together to get a gestalt composite closer to the target. And I mean, look at this, for example. That little specular highlight in the glass orb that is sort of beneath the stack of roses that are also silhouetting against this flame, such that little spark-like, ember-like points of light can materialize here in this image in a way that also has high contrast between something dark and something bright, which is exactly the textural makeup in the target, because this explosion isn't big enough to generate smoke this dark, so the image has to do it in some other weird way, and so it achieves it with this floral resolution. That's part of my new lingo. Projection space elements resolve into their particular instantiations in the matches, artificial or natural. I want to point out, that the high dimensional nature of the coincidence here. Not only do we get these pillars, but we get them. Whoops, get back in your spot. We get them in a pose match. It's not a perfect pose match, but the ratio defined by where this line bisects the larger rectangle, it's a consequence of how the three-dimensional thing is situated in space, of course. But nevertheless, at the level of the raw sort of XY correspondence data, it's just about this ratio between two subrectangles. This hits that exactly, and it achieves it naturally by being at sort of a very similar angle in the three-dimensional space. To prove my point to some degree. Oh, come on. I want to look at another match from FX. I want to look at the tree booth. Oh, well, actually, just before we start talking about that match, let's go back to Man on Fire real quick. Just to give you some context for what's going on in this scene. First of all, I cropped it just to sort of point out the area where there's the most direct correspondence. We also have sort of a duplicate of the idea of a double tower structure over here. In a way that also is hinting at that sort of line with a little choop gestalt that the North Tower has. Each one of them, you see, gets paired with its own floral explosion element. This match, actually, it gets two of them in association with the South Tower. This is also where the only sort of figurative material appears. Remember that we need some kind of a human element, perhaps a disembodied limb, which is exactly like what we saw in the subway artificial match, right? Which now, if I was doing this in the old way, I would absolutely show it for reference. So let's see how quickly I can just call that up again. Oh, whoops. What are you doing? It's not a bookmark. It is on artificial match. Where is it here? There it is. Right. In the S position, we just have these dislocated body parts. Exactly, right? Okay. You know what? I'm going to leave this open. And do I still have? Yeah, I do still have my other natural match. So what we're going to do is just shrink it down again and save it in case I need it later. Well, okay, so here's something I can kind of show off a little bit. Something I like to do when I have a match that I know has like a static, stable camera and not too much happening other than just a little ambience, I like to set up some loot points. Let's catch it right on the cut. Go. Then I'm gonna lower the volume.
Lipton off, I'll kill him. Not if they kill me. I just took off.
Oops, not sure how we lost sync there. That should catch it though, right? Yeah. I don't know. It's just it's nice to remember that we are actually working with moving images. Although the logical unit of analysis is definitely the shot. There are sometimes things happening in the motion that are significant. For instance, we have this red light in this natural match that is blinking on and off. This connects to the idea of like red embers or red sparkles, which you also have here, and just generally in the lights and so on. Here we have a kind of funny thing that I observe a lot in the natural matches that I do not see in the artificial matches. So there's often a little bit of, there's confusion about the x-axis. Here we have a very similar ratio again on the North Tower resonator. Right? Pretty similar ratio, but it's just spatially inverted relative to this. Something that I find quite impressive about this one is the foliage itself. Now, this is just a consequence of the fact that it's a tree, of course, but it manages to have this beautiful line bisecting it, just like we have in the target. Again, there's a kind of an inversion here. In the target, it's hot white. Here, it's dark black. There's definitely an indication of smoke line, isn't there? See, this just blew my mind when I first learned this, like I said, a little over a year ago or a year and a half ago or something. Because what is going on here? This statistical conditioning process taught me how to see an aspect of the natural matches that I wasn't aware of before. That's pretty indicative of some kind of actual funny business genuinely going on here. To point out sort of the nature of these like line divisions in the scene, how much illusion diffusion pays attention to that sort of thing. But to me, by far the most interesting thing is actually the specific nature of this foliage. Once again, we have sort of object grouping characteristic of this statistical conditioning. What with the red elements, the red car, because this thing's legs can kind of look like wheels, and it's like this weird anthropomorphic car, maybe. The point about this thing is that it's kind of chimeric. It's a little animal, a little human, a little machinic. But definitely also like a natural flowing form. That's why foliage tends to, if there's foliage that's going to appear, it tends to gravitate towards the relative position of S in the scene. But S has this funny, there's sort of this line here, this dark line here. The feet sort of look like they're at this angle. The body sort of broadly looks like it's at that angle. the face, once you learn to see it, also looks like it's at this kind of 3/4 angle. So there's a very strong gesture line associated with that because of the way the projection space works. Projection space is my term of art. That's not a normal machine learning term. I'll be defining it with some mathematical precision over the coming months and, well, years. It's a big topic. But in any case, we also have we have the getting tongue getting ahead of my articulation. We have this line, and also this line with this sort of funny piece of smoking debris. And when you look at this tree, there's a lot of white, sort of like specular detail that sort of bunches up in a way that implies this line. Also, this just seems to be like a piece of the tree that's closer to the camera. So it's also naturally separated from the background part of the foliage. And it has this, I think this is actually like real structure of the tree. It just kind of has this gesture here. And you can see that it sort of cuts into the rectangle a little bit. So that really gives it this quality. And that's sort of just where you want to see that gesture line broadly in because then this becomes clearly the head. And I find it so interesting that a major aspect of what allows the South Tower explosion to be perceived in this way is this image detail here. And that sort of comes together as this small little precise pupil inside of this larger hard to draw with the magnifier on, this larger darker come on bound here that makes up the eye. So probably to be kind of precise about it, I see it sort of sitting like that. I almost see eyelashes here in the way those secondary lines form there around the ridge. But then also the same thing happens over here. We have this kind of basically like this black circle inside of which is then a little isolated pupil. So that becomes really critical to then being able to perceive the nose, the weird mouth that seems like it has like a tongue or maybe like teeth or something in it. It's funny little ears, whatever those are, the whole way that this comes together. And if we examine the block that we've identified as the head, oops. Well, we can see that there's really exactly one place where that happens, and it's right here. The light catches some little piece of foliage there in such a way that we get this very crystallized sort of point of light inside of a darker bound. And now I want us to pay attention to the relationship between that emergent eye and this dividing line, and ditto here. So these are maintaining their structural relationship. That looks to me like the result of some kind of statistical conditioning process. I can't help it. I have empirical results now that show me that that's what that can look like. Because, remember, rainy day at the park. Let's Sometimes the focus isn't where I think it is. That works really well. Okay. I mean, look at how that... just observe the similarity. To remind everybody, this is an image that we know for sure 100% is the result of impact.jpg exerting strange internal statistical effects in how it came to be. This is a movie from still from some weird old 80s movie. Which, by the way, why is it not... I thought we had a video loop set up over here. Let's use that. I even think we kind of have the feet, because there are these weird little, if that's a big sort of obvious segment, and we have these two little patches of leaves underneath it. It really rather resembles that. Also, okay, I won't belabor the point. Whoops, didn't mean to save a bookmark there. What I'm going to do is zoom back out. And we're gonna... Actually, we're just gonna close these things now. Okay. This makes me think that somehow the natural matches are a result of iterative statistical conditioning. I think we're going to be able to meaningfully measure and talk about this quantitatively in the very near future. I'm excited to bring that forward. And, okay. Sorry for the hard cut in the middle of maybe trying to articulate something, but with no editing, that's just what we're going to get sometimes. And so thanks for watching if you watched, and I will see you in the future, God willing. How do I explain if you got static on the set? I bet it's in your brain. Well, sink and lock the shape. Ain't got no time to waste. Lock and load, no roads, 88.